This is a CZ45517 HMR. What I'm going to show you how to do is actually lighten the pull on the trigger. It's not difficult. I got the parts from a friend of mine, to be fair. Nothing exciting. They're about 12 quid from, I think it was Rimfire Magic. I'll drop a link below somewhere in the description and go from there. First thing you've got to do is you're going to need some TX bits. I think this one requires, it's T30. Rubber mallet and a pin punch. Nothing overly exciting, but yeah, I've got a pin to knock out, which can be a bit of a pain if you haven't got the right tools. Now I've already lightened the trigger pull on mine down to 1.5 pounds. Yeah, it's light, but it's not too light. It's nice and crisp, brakes perfectly, happy days. Right, first thing you've got to do is actually remove the stock from the action, which is done with the two screws which are located here and just behind the trigger guard. This will remove the trigger guard as well. That comes away when you remove these two screws. And that's that. There will be a metal plate just inside. Obviously you want to keep that separate as well. Right, the next thing to do would be the spring, which is just here behind the trigger itself. And in order to do that, you have to remove this pin right at the very back on the trigger. It's the biggest pin and furthest back. Use the pin punch. First off, try and push it out. You might find that it'll just push through. This one's still a little bit tight. Once that's all the way through, your pin punch is in and holding the trigger in place currently. Now, that little pin is tiny, probably about 15mm long. Goes without saying, but don't lose it. You'll find yourself in quite a bit of trouble. Okay, if you hold the trigger back, slide out the pin punch, you'll find the whole trigger comes forward, and slide the spring off. And this spring here is a 1.5 pound spring. It's the second one in the Rimfire Magic kit. It's fantastic. And this is what your trigger will look like without the spring on it. And then literally all you do is get your new spring, slide it onto the pin, and push back into the locator. It's like a little groove in it. And just test that it physically operates and you're not put it back in the wrong place. Then get your pin that you kept somewhere safe, and this is the fiddly bit, getting it all to line back up again. Like I said, it can be a pain. It's easier to get out than it is to get it back in. And I've just got a small block of wood there just to cushion it whilst I'm hitting it, because the last thing I want to do is bend anything or break anything. That's 3/4 of the way in. Just check that it's still lined up and good. Just not coming through the back yet. It's almost there. And don't do what I've done and knock it completely through. It just sets you back. So once it's in, equal amount either side, it's not going to fall out on you. Check your trigger. Beautiful. Okay. The next thing to do is to fit it back onto your stock, and then we'll just do a little bump test to make sure that the firing pin doesn't release on its own. Well, yes, we don't want that to happen. Little fiddly as always. Now you'll notice when you look at the screws you've got a longer one and a short one. The short one goes at the front. Just make sure your action is back into the stock perfectly. For the next bit you're going to need your bolt. Just make sure it's clear. Bolts in the gun and the gun's empty, obviously. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is cycle the bolt as if it's ready to fire, and then get the butt of the gun, just give it a couple of firm bumps on the table, and make sure that the trigger hasn't fired, and let the firing pin go. And that's good. So what we'll do is we should do it again just to make double sure. Still didn't fire, only when I pull the trigger, which is perfect. And that's that. Quite simple, very easy, and a cheap modification to your rifle, which will enable you to get much better grouping, because you'll find you aren't pulling the trigger, because the standard CZ trigger is quite heavy. Brilliant.